Imagine a world ravaged by war, where millions of lives are lost and entire cities are reduced to ashes. World War II, a horrific conflict lasting 6 painful years, stands as a paradigm of such devastation. Among its countless tragedies, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 stand out as haunting milestone in history. These unprecedented events marked the first and only use of nuclear weapons in warfare, leaving an indelible mark on humanity and permanently transforming the geopolitical landscape. So what is the exact thing that led to such extreme measures? This video will explore the chilling circumstances surrounding these bombings and the crucial decisions that were made, and also the profound ethical debates that continues to resonate today. By 1945, World War II was nearing its end in Europe. The Allied forces had successfully carried out numerous campaigns on both the Eastern and Western fronts, systematically dismantling the Axis powers and military strength. The fall of Berlin and the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany on May 8, 1945, marked the end of the conflict in Europe. However, in the Pacific theater, the war continued with undiminished ferocity. The Empire of Japan, though increasingly encircled, showed no signs of surrendering, despite significant defeats in key battles such as Iwo Jima and Okinawa, and enduring relentless bombing campaigns that devastated its cities and infrastructure. Japan remained defiant. The damage and civilian casualties caused by the bombings were mounting. 66 Japanese cities had been bombed. Around 1.7 million people were left homeless, and hundreds of thousands were killed or wounded. Notably, the napalm bombing raid on Tokyo on March 9, 1945, resulted in at least 100,000 deaths. Still, Japan remained steadfast in its refusal to surrender. The Allied forces, particularly the United States, faced the daunting prospect of a prolonged and bloody invasion of mainland Japan, which promised to cause significant casualties on both sides. Japan's military leadership clung to a strategy rooted in the Bushido Code, the samurai's code of honor, which emphasized honor unto death and unwavering loyalty to the emperor. This ideology manifested in tactics such as kamikaze attacks, where pilots would deliberately crash their aircraft into enemies' ships. By mid-1945, Japan had lost much of its naval and air power, yet it still possessed a considerable force of approximately 12,725 aircraft, many earmarked for suicide missions. The Japanese government, under Prime Minister Kantaro Suzuki, believed that inflicting heavy casualties on invading Allied forces could lead to more favorable surrender terms. Plans were in place to mobilize the entire population in a final desperate defense of the homeland. This included drafting men aged 15 to 60 and women aged 17 to 45, arming them with whatever weapons were available, from rifles to spears, to form a civilian militia of approximately 28 million people. On the Allied side, the military strategists grappled with the potential human cost of invading Japan. Operation Downfall, the planned invasion, was divided into 2 phases: Operation Olympic and Operation Coronet. Estimates suggested that American casualties alone could exceed 1 million, with Japanese casualties potentially reaching into the millions, including significant civilian losses. Amid these grim forecasts, the United States had developed a new unprecedented weapon under the code name Manhattan Project. On July 16, 1945, the first successful test of an atomic bomb, codenamed Trinity, took place in the deserts of New Mexico. The destructive power it demonstrated was unlike anything seen before, providing a potential means to force Japan's surrender without the need for a costly invasion. At the Potsdam Conference, July 17, August 2, 1945, Allied leaders, U.S. President Harry S. Truman, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin discussed post-war agreements and the ongoing war against Japan. On July 26, the Allies issued the Potsdam Declaration, an ultimatum demanding Japan's immediate unconditional surrender as follows: "We call upon the government of Japan to proclaim now the unconditional surrender of all Japanese armed forces and to provide proper and adequate assurances of their good faith in such act." action. The alternative for Japan would be its immediate and utter destruction. On July 26, Japan received this declaration, sparking mixed reactions among its leadership. While the Japanese government did not issue a specific response, the militarists considered the declaration insolent and insisted that the government reject it outright. Japan's government, divided between peace-seeking diplomats and hardline militarists, responded ambiguously to the Potsdam Declaration. Prime Minister Suzuki indicated neither acceptance nor outright rejection, using the term mokusatsu, which could be interpreted as to withhold comment or to treat with silent contempt. This non-committal stance was perceived by the Allies as a rejection. Facing Japan's apparent intransigence and eager to end the war swiftly, President Truman authorized the use of atomic bombs. The rationale was to compel Japan's surrender while minimizing Allied casualties. Additionally, there was a strategic consideration regarding the Soviet Union's role in the post-war balance of power. Demonstrating the atomic bomb's capability could serve as a deterrent to Soviet expansion and influence in Asia. The Target Committee, comprising military officials and scientists, was tasked with selecting suitable targets for the atomic bomb. The criteria included military significance, the potential to demonstrate the bomb's devastating power, and the psychological impact on Japan's leadership and populace. Hiroshima was chosen as the primary target due to its military importance. It housed the headquarters of the Japanese Second Army and was a key logistics hub. Moreover, it had been relatively untouched by prior bombing campaigns, which would allow for a clearer assessment of the bomb's destructive capacity. Nagasaki, a major port city with significant industrial activity supporting Japan's war effort, was selected as a secondary target. Like Hiroshima, it had not suffered extensive damage from conventional bombing, making it an ideal candidate to showcase the atomic bomb's power. At 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945, the B-29 bomber Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul W. Tibbets Jr., released the uranium-based atomic bomb known as Little Boy over Hiroshima. The bomb detonated approximately 600 meters above the city, unleashed an explosive force equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. The immediate effects were catastrophic. An estimated 70,000 to 80,000 people, about 30% of Hiroshima's population, died instantly from the blast and resultant firestorm. Buildings with a 1.6-kilometer radius were obliterated, and fires spread across 11 square kilometers. Radiation exposure led to countless more deaths and long-term health consequences, including cancer and genetic damage. Survivors, known as ibakusha, faced not only physical ailments, but also social stigma. The scale of destruction and human suffering was unprecedented, yet the Japanese government did not immediately move towards surrender. 3 days later, on August 9, the United States dropped the second atomic bomb, Fat Man, a plutonium-based device, over Nagasaki. Originally, the primary target was the city of Kokura, but cloud cover and poor visibility forced the bomber, Buck Scow, piloted by Major Charles W. Sweeney, to proceed to the secondary target. At 11:02 a.m., the bomb detonated at an altitude of approximately 500 meters, releasing energy equivalent to 21,000 tons of TNT. The terrain of Nagasaki, characterized by hills and valleys, somewhat contained the blast, but the destruction was still immense. An estimated 40,000 people died instantly, with total deaths reaching 70,000 by the end of the year due to injuries and radiation sickness. Concurrently, on August 8, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan, honoring a promise made at the Yalta Conference and seeking to secure territorial gains in Asia. The Red Army launched a massive offensive in Manchuria against the Japanese Kwantung Army, which was Japan's largest and most prestigious military force outside the home islands. Facing the dual shocks of atomic devastation and the Soviet invasion, Japanese Supreme Council for the Direction of the War was thrown into disarray. Emperor Hirohito, recognizing the futility of continued resistance and the catastrophic toll on the Japanese people, intervened in an unprecedented move. He directed the consul to accept the terms of the Potsdam Declaration with the sole condition that the imperial institution be preserved. Despite attempts by some military leaders to continue fighting, even plotting a failed coup to prevent the surrender, the emperor's decision prevailed. On August 15, 1945, Hirohito announced Japan's surrender in a radio broadcast, marking the first time the Japanese people had heard his voice. On September 2, 1945, the official surrender ceremony took place aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. Representatives of the Japanese government signed the instrument of surrender, firmly ending World War II. General Douglas MacArthur, Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, presided over the ceremony, which was attended by representatives from the Allied nations. The war's conclusion ushered in a new era of international relations, marked by the beginning of the nuclear age and the onset of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. The atomic bombings had demonstrated the devastating potential of nuclear weapons, raising profound questions about humanity's capacity for self-destruction. The decision to use atomic bombs against Japan has been a subject of intense debate among historians, ethicists, military strategists, and the public. Proponents argue that the bombings were necessary to bring about Japan's swift surrender, thereby saving countless lives that would have been lost in a prolonged conflict and potential invasion. President Truman and his advisors believed that Japan's military government was unlikely to surrender unconditionally without a dramatic demonstration of overwhelming force. The bombings, coupled with the Soviet declaration of war, provided the shock needed to compel Japan's leadership to capitulate. Opponents contend that Japan was already on the verge of surrender and that other means, such as a demonstration of the bomb's power on an uninhabited area or continued conventional bombing, could have achieved the same result without inflicting such massive civilization casualties. They argue that the bombings constituted a moral atrocity, targeting civilians and violating ethical principles of warfare. Prominent military figures, including General Dwight D. Eisenhower and Admiral William D. Leahy, expressed reservations about the necessity and morality of using atomic bombs. Eisenhower later wrote that Japan was seeking a way to surrender and that the use of the bomb was unnecessary and unjustified. Furthermore, some historians suggest that the bombings were intended not only to force Japan's surrender, but also to demonstrate American military supremacy to the Soviet Union, thereby influencing post-war geopolitical dynamics. The immediate death toll from the bombings was staggering, but the suffering extended far beyond those initial figures. Survivors faced long-term health issues due to radiation exposure, including increased rates of cancer and chronic diseases, psychological trauma, social discrimination, and genetic effects on subsequent generations added layers of hardship. The cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were left in ruins, their populations decimated. Rebuilding efforts took years, and the scars, both physical and emotional, persisted for decades. Memorials and museums in both cities now stand as testaments to the honors of nuclear warfare and as pleas for peace and disarmament. Internationally, the bombings prompted urgent discussions about the control and proliferation of nuclear weapons. The United Nations was established in part to prevent future global conflicts and to address the challenges posed by such devastating technology.
The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki represent a pivotal moment in human history, a convergence of technological advancement and ethical quandary. They highlighted the devastating potential of scientific progress when harnessed for destructive purposes, and underscore the profound responsibility that comes with such power.
The end of World War II brought relief and hope for a peaceful future, yet it also ushered in an era defined by the specter of nuclear annihilation. The debates surrounding the bombings continue to this day, reflecting ongoing tensions between military necessity, moral considerations, and the quest for global security. As we reflect on these events, it's imperative to remember the human cost of war and the imperative of pursuing diplomatic solutions to international conflicts. The legacy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki serves as a solemn reminder of the consequences of warfare, unchecked by ethical restraint, and the critical importance of striving for a world free from the threat of nuclear devastation.